I think it's fair to say that the reaction to the Spider-Man set has been a little bit mixed. And I'm not just talking about the typical Universes Beyond haters hating everything Universes Beyond and bitching like they did during the Final Fantasy previews, for example. I actually am talking about people who were looking forward to this and were excited for this, myself included, looking at the Spider-Man previews and feeling a little bit numb. One of the common threads I've heard is that the previews feel underwhelming, and I think that's because they decided to lead with the welcome decks. All of the cards with the spider set symbol in this right-hand corner here are from the welcome decks. The welcome decks do have some cards in the main set as well. For example, Aunt May shows up in one of the welcome decks, but it's also in the main set. But these cards here are the welcome decks, the intro decks, the ones meant to introduce new players to the game, and thus their power level is lower, like you'd expect from an intro deck. It's really hard to drum up interest by showing a lot of Magic players intro pack rares, uncommons, and commons. But beyond all of that, I just can't help but shake this feeling that Marvel's Spider-Man set for Magic the Gathering is a little bit weird, and not in a good way. I want to talk about development lead times, some of the reactions to previous products that might have affected this, and the overwhelming or overriding choices of a corporate entity looking to milk every single penny out of Magic as a property, and thus forcing designers to do things that they probably didn't want to do initially, and then having to design around said corporate decisions. Parts of this is going to be based on things that Mark Rosewater said on his blog or in his recent interview with IGN at Comic-Con, but some of it is just vibes and feels, and I completely and utterly put my hands up and say that. Some of this is just how I kind of, the inkling that I've got, a gut feeling, if you will. So let's get into it. If you enjoy the videos that I make and you want to see more of this stuff, then you can subscribe to the channel. Obviously, that helps to support the show, and comment down below your thoughts on today's video. And also, if you want to support me more directly, Patreon is the best way to do it. There's a link in the description below. For just £2 a month, you can get involved with my Discord server. We're just launching our online RTT. That's a 3-round tabletop simulator Warhammer 40k event, and we're launching a Chaos Boxing League. Although I've been sick this week and just haven't got round to actually doing the final stages of the planning and getting that rolling. So I guess you got a little bit more time to get involved. And on that note, I'm sorry if I sound sick, I'm just bunged up. First and foremost, the biggest issue with the set is that it's a small set. It's around 200 cards, approximately. Mark has said this is for many, many reasons. He was accused of lying during his IGN interview by one Tumblr user, which he clapped back and said he wasn't lying. He just didn't go into full details about the entire design process. The main reason that Mark sort of references for why they jumped from being a small to a medium set in the first place was the need to include more characters, or the want to include more characters and more Spider-Man adjacent stuff. That's fair enough, and I do believe that's probably part of it, right? As far as I understand it, Mark's a big Spider-Man fan. I believe him. It doesn't really answer the question as to why it was a small set in the first place. I believe Spider-Man, this hasn't been completely confirmed, but I believe it was originally going to be an Assassin's Creed-esque set. He does clarify in that same Blogger Talk post where he claps back at the accusation of lying that another reason they were changing it was that they'd gotten feedback players were less satisfied with smaller set sizes. I am almost certain that is the response to Aftermath, a product where the boosters had less cards in them, they were charging us the same amount, and it was basically just a load of chase rares, and the set wasn't draftable. It was kind of fucking stupid. And then Assassin's Creed came after that. Assassin's Creed itself was in Aftermath style boosters, even with some of the same like marketing jargon being used. They'd already realized that Aftermath was an absolute fucking shit show of a disaster. They also called the Pinkertons on someone for some leaks, but I'm not going to go into that in this video. But they hadn't had time to pivot and change the Assassin's Creed output, so Assassin's Creed came out as smaller boosters, undraftable, straight to modern. One other interesting footnote in all of this is that Wizards did say that the poor reception to the Aftermath style boosters for March of the Machines led to them just scrapping the project for Thunder's Junction. So those cards, the big scorecards, got just like rolled into the set, ending up with a set with just tons of different mythics and stuff in it. Proof that this was just not well received by the general audience. Now, Assassin's Creed going straight to modern was in itself a decision to try and sell cards to competitive players. There was no real reason to do that. It could have been Legacy and Commander only, but that wouldn't have sold as many packs. So they found the desire there, right? And the leading point for that is that Modern Horizons is or until Final Fantasy and Lord of the Rings, was the best-selling sets in Magic's history. Even after Lord of the Rings, I think Modern Horizons 2 was still outdoing it for a while. And I think in Japan too, prior to Final Fantasy, Modern Horizons 2 or 3 was the biggest selling product line for Wizards of the Coast in that region. And that will tell people at the top who don't give a fuck about the design of the game itself or the longevity that designing having cards that go straight into the modern is a way to sell cards. And if you extrapolate that, if you make the cards legal in as many formats as possible, it gives them as many audiences, as many ways to sell them. And thus we had the decision last year for all Universes Beyond to go through Standard. Every single Universes Beyond product now coming out, barring Secret Layers, and I guess it's only inevitable that we'll get that eventually, but all the sets and all the releases will go through Standard. That's led to 6 Standard legal releases every single year, going straight through Standard, making it the largest it's ever been, bigger than Extended, which was the longer version of Standard that they scrapped in favour of Modern many moons ago. Once upon a time, one of the reasons they dropped core sets was they thought Standards were too big and too complicated, and here we are with the biggest Standards we've ever seen, because corporate have decided that's the best way to sell Magic cards. So back to that small set thing. Assassin's Creed was a failure, essentially. As far as I understand it, it didn't sell very well, and the audience reception was bad. The IP itself wasn't really adjacent in that way that Chris Cox talked about in the investment call, where when asked why Lord of the Rings and Final Fantasy were such overwhelming financial successes, he talked about adjacency, of IPs being so intrinsically like Magic that they just cross over very well. I think Assassin's Creed is an example of something that doesn't do that in the fucking slightest. And shit value packs at a premium price, non-draftable, not playable in Standard. I mean, we can complain about everything going through Standard, but at least it gives the product a use. Assassin's Creed, for the most part, was a handful of cards that are mildly playable in Modern, or stuff for Commander if you want it. And there's some really big hitters in that set. Hell, some of the designs in there, I would argue, are more interesting from a complexity game piece perspective than any of the, or the majority of the Spider-Man stuff we've seen so far. It's just ironic, really, because they were in these expensive packs that no one wanted to buy, and were only really, the fancy ones, were only really usable in Commander. I'm talking about cards like Excalibur, for example. Brotherhood Regalia is not a $10 uncommon because it's playable in Modern. This is a Commander card. But like I said, they already knew Aftermath was a fucking disaster, and the Assassin's Creed product just had to soak up that disaster. In some ways, that might be why it was directed to Modern, as them trying to salvage the problem that they could see coming with the set. And to be clear, the reason Assassin's Creed had to tank this known issue was development times. Assassin's Creed was pretty much finalized, maybe even at the printers by the time Aftermath came out. Meanwhile, Spider-Man was several years off. March of the Machines Aftermath released over 2 years ago on May 12th, 2023, which was my birthday. That was the day I was born. The reception of the product allowed them then to make adjustments to Spider-Man, to say actually maybe the set should be larger. For context, Assassin's Creed was 110 cards and Spider-Man is now approximately 200. It's being cited as being 80 less than Edges of Eternity, which is 279? 276, not including a bonus sheet that's available in the boosters too. So that's fair, right? They adjusted a product that was originally going to be in a sort of a line that was disastrous and no one liked, so they expanded it, and then obviously decided to put it into Standard as well, and that's a larger card pool kind of fits that purpose too. But now we come to this point of explaining that actually it's designed for the quick draft mode. Quick draft I'm relatively positive on. It's the idea of drafting with just 4 people when you pick 2 cards from each booster, and then you play a round of Magic, and the winners from each pod go on to play as well. And Gavin's gone as far as to say that like drafting, building, and playing can take around 90 minutes to finish up. I don't think that removing draft is a thing we should do, but I think having a quicker mode that only uses 4 players, that allows players at your local store to try drafting for the first time, is actually a net positive. There are constant complaints at my local stores that people can't get people to draft. Getting 4 people to draft is literally, half the challenge of getting 8 people to draft. There is this argument that Spider-Man is supposedly designed with that in mind, and that's why it's a smaller set. I think that actually, if anything, Quick Draft might have been designed or developed to save this smaller set and any other smaller set coming in the next 12 months that we don't know about, to make it look like more of a holistic product. On that note, because it's only 200 cards, it means that cards repeat more often in the set, and it means there's less space in terms of in the actual cards themselves to flesh out archetypes for a limited environment. Archetypes are like draft strategies, things that were designed around. The great thing about drafting and limited play in general is that the gameplay is relatively emergent because you are building on the fly and finding your path toward deck construction and playing, but of course this is in a playground that someone else has designed. In the case of Edge of Eternities and most Magic sets, there's 10 archetypes, usually in the 2 color pairings. Sometimes there'll be 3 color pairings too in the sets that are designed in that way. Mark has confirmed that Spider-Man only has 5 draft pairings, which, sure, it's a small set, sure, it's designed for quick draft, but it just feels, I'm going to now get into the emotional feeling side of things, it feels half-arsed. That's not to say that love and energy and care has not gone into creating this product, this set. I won't use the word product, it sounds so fucking what's the word I'm looking for there? Dismissive almost. I mean, that's what they will say. Product and intellectual property are the terms thrown around in interviews about this stuff, but I want to say set, this designed thing that creatives have made. But it feels like a lot of these decisions aren't natural decisions based upon, like, you know, the organic growth of a creative product or project. Instead, as I said product, didn't I? Instead, it feels like just like ticking boxes and completing and creating things to some sort of corporate mandate to fulfill something for someone who works above you, to appease middle management and upper management more so than the creative desires to create something interesting from a gameplay or even aesthetic perspective. And that feels even worse in the general context of looking at Universes Beyond and saying, is this a cynical cash grab? I believe not necessarily completely. I've done videos on this before, that actually people can engage with things they like Spider-Man, for example, through the medium of design of magic cards, and that can be a creative pursuit. However, it doesn't feel too creative when you're hamstrung by the decisions of a corporation trying to make too much product that people can't consume, and also find ways to force people to want to consume it and buy it when they don't really want to. So we got all of those issues, and then we combine with the fact that actually Spider-Man is not coming to Magic the Gathering Arena or Magic the Gathering Online. Now, if you have not been following, I'm sorry that you're hearing this for the first time. It's as bad as it sounds. It's fucking stupid. But essentially, the Spider-Man product is getting reskinned completely to be in-universe of Magic the Gathering on Arena and Magic the Gathering Online. The reasons for this being is that they don't have the license to use the Spider-Man stuff in a video game or digital recreation of Magic. The exact ins and outs of it we're not privy to. My original consideration was that they just couldn't afford it, that Marvel were asking for too much to break or change the exclusivity that they have with, say, Second Diner, who are making Marvel Snap, the digital card game version of Marvel at the moment. But it might just be that this is originally intended to be a dozen, 2 dozen, maybe at most 100 cards that were never going to go through standard, and thus they didn't give a shit about putting them onto digital clients. And then that evolved and changed several times over its design lifetime, and then they ended up at the end going, oh shit, we never agreed the contract to be able to put this on digital platforms in the first place. Part of me wonders even if in its original guise it wasn't going to be an Aftermath style Assassin's Creed release, but instead some welcome decks for new players and a couple of secret layers. Those secret layers have morphed their way into the scene bundles, or maybe it would have even been scene bundles on the shelves, but like not even a set, right? Just a collection of like character portrait moments, some welcome decks, and that's it. And then we have a full Marvel set down the line, some sort of endgame Doomsday style crossover thing that has more depth and more range of characters and options. Anyway, back to the contract thing. This won't be the first time they fuck contracts like this without thinking ahead, because don't forget, both Warhammer and Doctor Who had problems coming to Magic the Gathering Online. Warhammer, chiefly, they couldn't have the individual cards be put into like treasure chests or like compilation boosters, for example. They still can't do that on paper too, but even digital, because part of the contract, not completely confirmed, but we can read between the lines to figure this out. The part of the contract was that they couldn't sell the cards individually. They had to be sold in the original product design, which was the case when they sold the fucking Commander decks on Magic the Gathering Online. If you wanted to get a copy of Poxwalker, or should I say 4 copies of Poxwalker for your Legacy Dredge deck, you had to buy exactly 4 copies of the Commander product to get the 4 cards. Now, of course, that is how it works in paper, but historically on Magic the Gathering Online, when a card like Poxwalker becomes popular from a Commander product, it will be put into the treasure chest system. These are like little boosters that you can win through winning events. You crack them open, you get random cards, including the things they've been put into there because they're competitively viable cards from the Commander decks that then go onto the secondary market and get sold. They couldn't put them in the treasure chests. They just weren't able to, because no one thought ahead to this. There's a lot of really shit pre-planning, and that might be the case for a lot of this, right? Was a small set, then wasn't a small set, was going to be an Aftermath style product, can't confirm completely, but that's my inkling. Then it's not going through standard, is going through standard. Again, they might have always planned for it to go through standard. I just don't believe that. They can say it, but I just don't in my bones believe it. And then the digital license shit too, it's just an absolute lack of planning for the longevity and the health of the game. And then we have the last bit of like, I was excited for this, but looking at even the non-welcome deck cards, it's just a lot of different Spider-Men. Now, I know the set is Spider-Man, so you kind of expect Spider-Man, Spider-Men, Spider-People, Spider-Animals. I get it, but also like, that does feel shallow, right? One of the funniest things about Doctor Who was that on one hand, you had the bizarro plastic mask alien stuff that people know from Doctor Who, but also you had BBC like bit role actors holding saucepans in their kitchen. In some ways, that juxtaposition is absolutely part of what Doctor Who is. The BBC set dressing as they have people walk around in silly outfits. The argument I would make that you'd struggle to flesh out an entire draftable set if you just got loads of blokes stood in their kitchen. Doctor Who suited being Commander decks more, and I wonder if that's the same case for something like Spider-Man. But it just feels a bit shallow. Like, I get that all the combat tricks and supporting cards for the limited environment do need to be Spider-Man themed in some capacity, whereby being a very clean one, a very makes sense kind of one, it's someone getting webbed up in an Oblivion Ring style effect, doesn't need a Spider-Man calling card in the art. Like, every card doesn't need an actual Spider-Man in the art. I think it's going to be like an 80% hit rate for even just like a rendering of a Spider-Man in universe in the art. It's a bit much. And now Scorsese's famous part of cinema, Taxi Driver, has a magic card, which is really ironic considering Scorsese's attitudes towards Marvel as a cinematic universe. But there really is like a shallowness to this set, I guess, at first glance. Bearing in mind we've only seen 73 of the cards, but also 73 of the cards is... what's that? Is that like 40% of the set has been spoiled? A small look at the set ends up being a large portion of the set because the set's so tiny anyway. But I just feel a little bit underwhelmed. Like, some of the individual cards are a bit strange. Origins of Spider-Man does read like a singular spider becomes the hero, as opposed to a human being bitten by a spider becoming a Spider-Man. And Amazing Spider-Man is the team leader Spider-Man from the Avengers more so than Spider-Man himself. But it just feels like it lacks the actual depth of another set, or something like even Fallout or Warhammer or Doctor Who, and especially, if I'm honest, Final Fantasy. Like, Final Fantasy is one of my least favorite of all the IPs they've done so far as main sets, and I feel like it's the best way they've done it. It's all encompassing, it's a huge variety, it's a massive cross-section and cut of a huge intellectual property. And maybe that's the thing, right? Maybe not only is Final Fantasy and Lord of the Rings more adjacent to magic, as to use Chris Cox, the CEO of Hasbro's words, but also there's just more stuff to engage with, to pull from flying whales to suplexing trains. There's a huge amount of variety that isn't man in leotard or man in superhero costume. And I'm saying this as someone who's an absolutely fucking huge comic book nerd and comic book fan. For those of you that don't know, I collected DC Comics for about 6 years, like straight. Justice League, Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, and I read in and around that before and after as well. Like, DC Comics is something I absolutely love. The new Superman film absolutely ruled. I'm really excited for the new DC Cinematic Universe. Now it's actually under the creative control of someone who knows what they're doing. A DC Universes Beyond would, even in spite of this video, get me very, very excited. So why am I not so high on Spider-Man, who is one of my preferred Marvel characters? I played Spider-Man 2 in the lead up to this like spoiler season. I completed it on PC on the recent re-release, and I started reading Spectacular Spider-Man as well on the Marvel app. I don't know if it's all the surrounding gumph and the surrounding like lack of planning and lack of care that makes this feel worse than it is. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe it's just that like there just doesn't seem to be a depth. This doesn't feel like a magic set. It feels like a secret lair with added filler. Like, I wanna like Angry Rabble and Daily Bugle reporters as part of the tapestry and texture that is Spider-Man, but I'm just left feeling a little bit cold on it, and that's a shame. To be clear and to give some like measured response, maybe the other side, some fairness to it, there are some designs that I like, and there are things that I like. Seeing Aunt May as like a caring soul sister variant was really cool. The comic book cover Spider-Man is probably one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time. And these sagas, where they're 3-part comic panels with the square boxes, are absolutely inspired, and I love them. Even if I'm not a big fan of the Origins of Spider-Man card in terms of its flavoring, this visual design and the art used is phenomenal. Weirdly, I like these like comic book box art less on Doc Ock, for example. I just feel like this looks almost like not a magic card. And I'm not saying the sagas do look like magic cards. I guess that's just a more inspired way of doing the saga that looks like what it's, pertaining to, a arc within the Spider-Man comics. Meanwhile, the comic book card looks too much like another comic book card game, I guess. I don't hate it, it's just not my preference. So Spider-Man feels weird. And I think it's because of the meddling along the way to get it to where it's got to. Obviously, we've got the full set to come, and I'll do an update accompaniment video to this once the previews for it are finished in 3 weeks or whenever it is. But I do think we will look back on this set as a very messy integration of Universes Beyond and Magic, or Magic and other IPs, in a way that we won't look back on Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is a turning point, a watershed moment in Magic, showing that Universes Beyond can be an incredible financial success and a success in drawing new people in. I went to pre-release for Edge of Eternity, and the majority of people I spoke to were post-COVID Magic players, with a big portion of them coming in because of Fallout, because of Warhammer, because of Final Fantasy. It was wonderful wonderful to hear, and to see them excited about Edges of Eternity was even better. Like, I know some of you watching this are absolute Universes Beyond haters, but the reality is it's doing wonders for growing the game, even if the game is not quite what you recognize from your youth. I've been a sick Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.